All right. Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to our live demo today. In case this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Matt Ulayson, and I am one of our Google Cloud training architects here at Linux Academy, where we help get you trained for all the cloud things, Google Cloud, Linux, DevOps, pretty much all the high-end technology fields people care about today. If this is your first time here, what we've been doing for the past couple months is we take suggestions from our students or whoever else about what kind of topics you want to see demoed live when it comes to different types of services on Google Cloud. And these suggestions run the gamut from either very beginner topics to pretty advanced topics as well. We take all suggestions, assuming we can fit it within about a 45-minute to an hour live stream. And yeah, basically, it's just kind of a what do you want to see us to do? And we go ahead and do it. So we actually have a variety of topics we're going to cover today. I did basically, we kind of have a grab bag of topics that by themselves don't really fit into a 45-minute demo. So it's kind of a lightning round of sorts, in which we are going to go over a variety of topics, kind of going from one topic over to the other, again, based on audience suggestions. So speaking of audio suggestions, what we do every week depends on what you tell us that you want to see. And before we go into it, if you want to go ahead and suggest something that we are going to stream, maybe in an upcoming week, we actually have a Google form for that. If I can find my link here, I thought it was here somewhere. Give me 1 second. I will share that with you. I'm going to paste in chat, and if there's a particular topic you've just been really wanting to see someone demonstrate on Google Cloud, whether it's a really beginner, how do I get started topic, to something really advanced such as continuous deployment pipelines or something crazy like that, going to that link is where you can go to a simple Google form in which you tell me what kind of demo you want to see. And optionally, you can also give your name and email address in case I need to follow up for some additional information. I promise I'm not going to sign you up for any sort of spam, but that's just if I need to go ahead and follow up with you as well. And speaking of requests, these are some of the requests we've done in the previous weeks as well. Everything highlighted in yellow is a topic we have covered. The ones highlighted in green is the ones we're going to cover today. So for example, we've talked about installing the Google Cloud command line format. We've demonstrated Cloud VPN last week, in which we demonstrate how to connect to another network over the public internet over a secure VPN connection. We've covered Deployment Manager. Talked about some of the Google Cloud services you can only do with command line as well. And we've also done some other ones that aren't in this particular list here. The ones we're going to cover today is by your request. We're going to talk about how to get started with Compute Engine, kind of from a beginner's perspective. We also had kind of a request to cover a service that's in alpha right now, which means it's not fully featured yet, but it is kind of cool, in which you can monitor a load balancer for a managed website that has basically multiple compute instances on the back end. We're going to demonstrate that. We also had some suggestions for how do you just create a project from scratch, basically starting from square one. We'll go over that real quick. And if we have time, and we may need to flesh this out more in a future session, I want to go over a service called Data Prep that just came out of beta, and I think it's actually a really cool product. And the more people learn about it, they think it's pretty neat as well. We'll see if we have time. We'll kind of see how we go with that. So let's just go ahead and jump into our suggestions. Now, the main reason that we do this is that we're all about learning here at Linux Academy. And whether you are a seasoned cloud professional or Linux professional or just starting out, we all always start from somewhere. And no matter where you're at one point or another, you have the idea that you have no idea what you're doing. We were all there. There's no reason to be ashamed about that. And what we want to do is, how we try to conduct these sessions is that we want to get people from not feeling like they know what they're doing, which is very intimidating, to the point where they are a seasoned professional. And getting from here over to there is always a really big step. So that's really kind of the main theme that we go for just in our company in general, and also with these weekly demos of showing how to learn and hopefully learning something new to basically get better at what you're doing. So let's go ahead and jump in kind of our lightning round of requests today. The first one we wanted to do was we had a number of suggestions asking about, hey, how do we start from ground zero, having absolutely nothing in our Google Cloud account? How do we basically create a project, the bare essentials? Excellent question. We always have to start somewhere. I'm going to go and demonstrate that one here real quick using the web console. We did use it doing the command line a few weeks ago. We're going to go and do like the more user-friendly web console version. So if you already have a number of projects or you have no projects at all, you're probably going to get a screen something like this, but you'll have a menu kind of here in the top left that is essentially your project picker, or if you have no projects already created, that is where you will go to create a project. Now, if you're not aware, a project is the primary, kind of like the center of the universe and everything from a Google Cloud perspective, how you actually organize and separate and manage what resources go into what different type of bucket on Google Cloud. So everything revolves around projects, creating them, deleting them, managing access to them. If you want to create a project, you just click that little button up there just to the right of where it says Google Cloud Platform. And again, I already have some projects up and running here. But if you want to go ahead and create a new project, you just click on the shiny big new project button. I'm getting a URL not found. That is actually quite hilarious. Let me try this again. There we go. Click on new project, and there's really two different fields here that you need to fill out. One is called the project name, and the other is your project ID. And am I actually getting... Now, the project name is anything you want it to be. Okay, I'm getting some reports that camera is frozen, screen share is fine. It may be buffering. Let me keep an eye on that. Let me know. I'm showing good upload speed right now. Thanks for pointing out the camera issue there. We're going to kind of give it a second. I don't know if I can really adjust any settings on the fly. We'll keep an eye on that. We'll get back to that in just a second. Sorry about the camera issues here. But going back to the project, there are two fields you need to fill out. One is the project name, which can be anything that you want it to be. We can call it something just called like My Test Project. And the other field is called a project ID. Now, the project ID is the really important field that if you're working with scripts, if you're working with applications that need to refer to your project, the project ID is what it refers to. Now, the project name can be literally anything it wants. You can have spaces there, it doesn't really matter, but the project ID has to be globally unique, which means that it has to be the only version of that particular project ID across the entirety of Google Cloud Platform. And you'll notice that when I typed in just My Test Project, it automatically suggested a project ID of my-test-project and some random numbers after it. What I like to do as a best practice, it's not required, but what I like to do is to keep them straight and create a unique project name that will also correlate to be the same as a unique project ID. I tend to use a shortened version of my domain name, which is Professional Wireless is our demo project we've been using. And I put in, we'll say PW Test Project -1. That's the friendly name, which can be anything that you want it to be. And it will typically suggest the exact same project ID as well. This one's not unique enough, so maybe if I do My Test Project 3, the project ID automatically resolved to be the exact same as well, and it fits. And you also have the option of manually specifying a project ID as well. Be aware though if it is not being picked up as a globally unique one, you will get a little bit of an error that this project ID is not available because it is not unique enough. It may need to do that from as well. And if you're on an organization account, you would choose what domain that would go underneath. In this case, it's my domain of professionalwireless.net. If you're on a personal account, maybe using your own personal Gmail account, you would not have that option. So there is a little bit of a difference between a personal and an organization-wide account. And that's really about it. You give it a name, it'll either automatically assign a project ID, which is the unique one, and or you can go ahead and specify one as well, and then click on Create. How's the camera doing? Is the camera still frozen at the moment? There's about a 20-second delay on the stream here, so I'm not going to get immediate feedback. Let me know in chat if that's still acting up for you, and I might have to pause and restart the stream here in a moment. We may troubleshoot that. Anyway, once you create the project, it's going to go ahead and spin up for a minute. It takes about, 30 seconds to go ahead and create it. And then if you click on your little project picker again, it automatically drops me into it. But if I went ahead and clicked on it again, go to all, we see my projects here. And then just like that, you have a new project up and running, and you can rock and roll from there. You know, in my preview, I'm also showing that it's frozen too. Give me 1 second here. Sorry about the camera issues here. I want to actually remove the video capture and then bring it back on again. A little bit of quick technical difficulties. Go to display capture. Actually, not display capture. I want to do video capture. Always got to love doing live streaming. Little issues pop up all the time. Here we go. Video capture device. You can't see us off screen. I'm just using an application called OBS, and it's usually worked until today. Okay, I am nice and big there. Let's go ahead and fix that. Okay, let me see how that works in my preview. I can see my head bobbing around. It should be good. Okay, I see me popping up on the stream there as well, so I think we're good. So, sorry about slight technical difficulties. It just means you didn't get to see my pretty face for the last few minutes, which may or may not be a bad thing, depending on who you ask. All right, thank you for that. Let me go ahead and make that window just a little bit smaller. Don't want to take up too much of the screen there. Okay, looks good on my end. Let me know if it isn't good on your end, and we'll go from there. Okay, so let's head to create a project. So moving on to our next request. Awesome, thank you, Elle, and everyone else. Now you have to look at me. Ugh, are you sure it's really an upgrade? Anyway, we had a request of how to do another basic request of how to work with Compute Engine, which I think is a really good request. A little bit basic, but that is what we're all about here. We take the wide gamut of basic to advanced. So Compute Engine instances are really your kind of primary launching point for doing anything on the cloud. It's basically a virtual machine, so you have a virtual server to do whatever you want. It's basically a computer with an operating system on it that you interact with, that you work with on a cloud platform. If you worked with VMs in the past, pretty much the same thing. Let's do a real basic one here real quick, and we'll kind of watch time as well. Easiest way to do that within our test project we just created, if you go to our top left menu, I have Compute Engine as a shortcut here, but if you scroll down a bit, go down to Compute Engine from here as well. And we need to initiate our API. Let me go and jump over to our project that already has the API enabled, so we don't demo fail that. And we have a number of machines up and running already. So we're just going to create a very simple Linux Compute Engine instance. The Windows one is a little bit involved. We may do in a future session. By the way, if you want to see that, go to that forum and go ahead and suggest that. We're going to go ahead and create a quick Linux instance from here. Now, there is a lot of options in there, and also these menus are changing all the time as well. This little left menu, I think this is new from the past couple days, so it's new to me as well. It seems to be a little bit more of a user-guided experience, which is actually kind of cool. So there's a lot of fields here. The basics are giving your instance a name, and when I say instance, I'm basically meaning a virtual machine. These do not need to be globally unique. It only has to be unique to your individual project. Instance 1 works perfectly fine here as well. You need to put that virtual machine somewhere. So we're going to choose from our variety of global Google Cloud regions. I'm in the Kansas City area, so I'm going to do US Central 1. And there are multiple physical data centers within that region. Either one of these will do. We'll just do US Central 1C. We need to give it a machine type. Basically, a machine type is your specs, so how many processors you want in it and how much memory you want in it as well. The default is one processor with 3.75 gigabytes of memory. There are a number of pre-configured options you can do, and you can also customize it where you can do any combination of CPUs to memory. So maybe you need only a few CPUs, but you need a ton of memory, or some sort of a mix and match from there. That's actually a feature that's unique to Google Cloud. I don't know if AWS has it now, but some of the other cloud platforms, you pretty much have a pre-configured option, and that's about it. So something kind of unique there as well. Next, you need to choose your operating system. So a virtual machine needs to have an operating system on it. So for that, you'd go to boot disk. And from here, there are some publicly maintained operating systems, pretty much every major Linux version, Debian, CentOS, you have Ubuntu, Red Hat, you have some container optimized versions of, I believe these are either Debian or Ubuntu, and you also have your Windows operating systems as well. And this basically what happens is when you choose one of these pre-built options, it puts that operating system on your machine for you. Now be aware that some of these do have an additional cost with it. Some of the Red Hat, SUSE or SUSE, I forget what the pronunciation is on that as well. And also Windows Server has a licensing cost attached to that that's only applied when the machine is actually turned on. I believe with the Windows installations, it's about $25 or $30 per month. Actually, I'm curious on that. If we did the desktop experience, Windows basically costs you $30 per month to run it nonstop. Some of the premium Linux images, such as Red Hat and OpenSUSE, are actually a good bit more, which I found a little bit surprising. Most of them, though, are free. If we do the default Debian distribution, there's no additional costs on that. And that would also, within the same field, you would choose what kind of disk you want, whether it is a regular disk or a solid-state disk, and how big your disk is going to be as well. We're going to stay with the defaults of a standard disk and 10 gigabytes. So we're going to be running Debian Linux distribution with a standard disk at 10 gigabytes in size. There are a large variety of other options in here as well. You need to have a service account attached to it. We don't really have time to get into service accounts within this particular demonstration. But basically, a service account is the application account not attached to a person that determines what kind of Google Cloud rights you have within the actual virtual machine itself. Now, that applies to Linux distributions, but with Windows, it doesn't really apply to it in quite the same way. Windows is a little bit different on Compute Engine. Determine if you need to allow HTTP or other types of web traffic to it, and you have a large variety of other options, such as what network you want to attach it to, how many network cards you want to attach to it, any sort of a startup script that you want to run when running it. Getting a little bit in the weeds here, but this is your basic defaults here when you give it a name, a location, how many CPUs and how much memory we're going to attach to it, and what kind of operating system we want to give to it as well. And if you're into scripting, and we talked about this on our very first session, this will give you the command line equivalent of creating all of this, so you can easily build scripts via command line just by using the web console as a cross-reference. And then when it's done, we'll go ahead and click on Create. Takes about 20 to 30 seconds or so, and then it's up and running. Let's see, looking at comments here. Yes, this is going to be automatically recorded, so about 5 minutes after our stream is done, if you go to our Linux Academy YouTube channel, it'll be up and running, so you can go back and view this if you're checking it out later on. So yes, it will be automatically recorded and uploaded pretty much right after the stream is done, so good question on that. Okay, so completed pretty quickly. This is our instance 1. There is a web-based SSH button, so we just click on that. And just like that, after about 10 seconds or so, we're in our Linux instance, and we have a fully armed and operational Linux installation, and we have our virtual machine. We can do stuff from there. Now, Windows, we may want to demonstrate a little bit more in detail for a future session. Again, if you want to see that, go to that forum and go ahead and suggest it. It's a little bit more involved how to get it up and running. Linux, though, it's very quick to get up and running. I mean, I'm in it. Basically, clicked a few buttons, spec'd out what version of Linux I want on there. I can go ahead and update my repositories, and I can do typical Linux stuff from there. Pretty easy. So that is working with Compute Engine, at least a quick starter primer in a nutshell. Okay, let's go back to our suggestions. The next suggestion we had from, I'm going to mess the name up, Mohibul. Anyway, he suggested last week, he was wanting to see a service in alpha that basically means it's not quite ready for prime time yet, in which you can monitor and log your HTTP load balancer for different types of traffic that's going to it. We're going to go ahead and demonstrate that now. So if everyone can do me a favor real quick, I'm going to go ahead and post a link in chat for a web page. What I want you to do is, if you don't mind, copy and paste that into a new web browser and just kind of refresh the page a few times. What it is, it's a very, very simple website, but I want to actually start logging some data from some people so we can go ahead and demonstrate with that. Very simple website, version 1, welcome to your custom website, super, super basic. But if you wouldn't mind going into it and hitting the refresh button a few times, I want to actually generate some logs to our load balancer that I want to go ahead and demonstrate here in just a second. So what I'm doing here is that this is a new service that is, again, in alpha, which means that not quite ready for prime time, but it's still kind of cool to demonstrate. And we got some, someone asked that we demonstrate it, so that's what we're going to do now. And basically, we had a session a few weeks ago on Stackdriver in which you can monitor and log everything that's happening within Google Cloud Platform. And it's a new service here in which you can log and monitor what's going on with a load balancer. And if you're not familiar with how load balancing works, this particular website that we're going to isn't actually attached to a machine, an individual virtual machine, but rather it's attached to a load balancer. And how a load balancer works is most scaling websites operate it in that we have a single front-end IP address, which is that address that we just gave you for everyone to go into and refresh a few times. But how a load balancer works is it takes those incoming requests to a single point of reference, which is that IP address there, but it actually distributes or balances that load across a pool of backend machines. So this website right here is attached to a load balancer that you're all accessing, and that load balancer is distributing requests randomly to a pool of individual machines. So one of you may be getting a website from this machine, but another one of you may be getting to a website on another machine, and that load balancer is what's balancing all the different requests. And kind of see how this works behind the scenes. I set this up in advance because it is a little bit of an involved setup. If you do want to see how to set up a load balancer group from scratch, again, suggested on the form. But we have a load balancer set up. We have a front end and a back end. That back end, well, the front end is the IP address that you're all working with right now. The back end is a managed instance group that I believe has only 2 machines in it right now. So that website is actually being served by 2 different machines at the moment. So how the new alpha monitoring service works is that you can see, number one, where your requests are coming from onto the actual load balancer yourself, and then you can monitor it for a variety of different metrics to see how many requests you're getting to it, what kind of latency you're getting to it. That's what we're going to go ahead and demonstrate here real quick. First thing I'm going to do is go into our Stackdriver monitoring. Now, we did have a more in-depth lesson on how Stackdriver monitoring works on a previous demo in our YouTube channel, so go check that out if you want to learn more. But within our Stackdriver monitoring service, if you go to the resources field here in the top left, it automatically recognizes that you have a load balancer set up with our test project. And that is our same load balancer we looked at here just a few minutes ago called WebLB, just Web Load Balancer. And this will give you a variety of metrics and breakdowns of what that load balancer is doing. That, again, that's this component right here. And we have information such as latency, how many requests we're getting per second. You see the spike there from when I was testing it out last night. Right now it's practically 0 because not many people are on it right now. We may fix that here in just a moment. And some other metrics there as well. Pardon me. You can also get alerts if the feature was completely up and working right now, in which if the amount of requests is over a certain amount for a period of time, which may indicate a possible denial of service attack, you could create a new alerting policy. And how an alert works is that if a series of metrics are met, it will send an alert out to you either via email, text, or a variety of other services as well. And you basically create a new alerting policy through here. You create a condition. Now, again, we don't have the features here we need yet because it is in alpha. Right now, the only thing you can do is log bytes and log entries. I probably want to do something like a number of requests. So if this feature was completely up and running, maybe if you want to do log entries, you basically create a metric in which you would measure the amount of log entries over a certain period of time. We'll say number of time series violates. Let's say like 100 per minute. And next we want to say maybe like 100 log entries per minute over 3 minutes, which would kind of indicate some sort of a sustained amount of traffic going to the website that may be a little bit outside the bounds of what you want to work with. Again, we're just going to do a quick example here because we don't really have all the different metrics that we want to have because it is an alpha right now. You set up a notification of who you want it to alert. You'd have it want to alert myself. Documentation, give it a naming policy. And what would happen is if we have over 100 logs per minute over a period of 3 minutes, I would then receive an alert saying, hey, this is something outside the bounds of what you usually have. You may want to go ahead and take a look at that. Let's see if we have some additional logs now on here from the logging side. And what happens is that every time you or anyone else refresh that website, it created a new log file. So if we go to Stackdriver, go to logging. Give it a second to come up. And I did not go to Do Not Disturb mode on my Mac here. Okay, we're in our load balancer page here, and if we go to our newest logs, looks like we did have a variety of logs come in, 10:57 a.m., and a bunch of requests came in from all over the place. So every time one of you refreshed your website, it generated a log. Now, if we take a look at some of these, we're going to expand one of these logs. We get some information about where that request came from. So if we expand this HTTP request, and this is all in JSON format, we can see that this remote IP came in from here, whoever that is. I'm tracking you, just kidding. But we can get information about where these different types of requests are coming in. So every time someone refreshes or gets into the page, it generates a log. So we now have a log of all of our different requests hitting the load balancer, and it gives us breakdown of information such as what web browser they're using. It looks like a lot of people are on Chrome 69, which is the newest version. That's what I am on as well. We're also getting some information such as some of the WebKit information. A lot of info here. And it gives a very detailed breakdown about each one of those different requests coming in. So why would you want to use something like this? So like, what's the point of all of this? If you're in a situation where you were going through a suspected denial of service attack or some sort of outside the bounds traffic that you weren't expecting, you can go to your logs here and you actually get a pretty good breakdown of where those requests are coming from. Maybe you need to blacklist a particular IP address. It gives you the information from there, or other bits of information such as people are reporting errors with a website. You can get information such as what web browser or what sort of web browser WebKit they're working with, and kind of give you information about the requests coming in. So maybe you can correlate that with issues you're having with your website and giving you a little bit more information about what to work with from there. So logging information, giving you a good amount of information about what requests are coming in that you can then take action on depending on what type of situation you're dealing with. Again, fairly new service. It's in alpha right now, so it's not fully baked. But I think it's pretty cool. And someone see me demonstrate it, so there you go. Let's see, how are we doing on time here? We've been on for about a half hour. The last thing I want to briefly go over, and I may be pushing it on time here, is going over a service that just came out of beta called Cloud Data Prep. Now, if you are a Linux Academy subscriber and you've gone through our Google Cloud Data Engineer course, it's going to be basically a repeat of what I did in that particular lesson in the course. But I've been wanting to do it for a demo for a while. We may need to push this back to a future session. I don't know if we're going to be running late on time here. Maybe I got 15 to 30 minutes left before I need to start wrapping this up. So cloud data prep is basically when it comes to big data or getting insights from different types of data, something that a data engineer would want to do. You would need to basically sanitize that data or clean up your data so it's usable. If you have, you may have heard of saying garbage in, garbage out. If the data you have coming in is poorly formatted and essentially quote unquote garbage, you're not going to really be able to get very many good insights from that. Actually, a question came in. Siva's asking how to know the owner of each project. If multiple projects have been present in our account and none of them are created by us, those are giving access to us by someone else. Cool. I'm going to actually go ahead and answer that question real quick. Thank you for that. Let me go ahead and backtrack here a little bit. I have a feeling we may need to push data prep back to another session. So, Siva asks, how do you know who is the owner of a project if you've been given access to that project? Good question. That comes down to looking at IAM rules and permissions. The easiest way to get there, assuming you have access to a project, is if you go to your top left menu, scroll down to IAM and admin. IAM and admin is where you find out who has what particular permissions on a set given project. And this is basically your information here as well. We have a lot of service accounts, which is a little bit outside the scope of what we're discussing here, but that is a pretty relevant topic. But from here, we can actually see who has what access to a project. We have two user accounts called Admin at Professional Wireless and Matthew at Professional Wireless. Again, these are made-up people that I use for my demo organization. And here we can see that they are both the owner for the project, and they're also the organization administrator, which is an inherited permission at the organization level that carries on down to the project level as well. But short answer is, if you want to know who all else has access to the project and who owns that project, in case you need to reach out to them for, hey, give me more permissions, that is your top left menu, IAM, and then you can see your accounts here and what kind of permissions they have in there. So I believe that should answer your question about how to find out who has access to what and who to bug for more permissions, essentially. Mark asks, is this video session and previous ones recorded to review later? Yes, they are. In fact, let me go ahead and show that off to you here real quick. I'm going to go ahead and flip over to another window just because we have a number of people asking about it. If you go to our YouTube channel for Linux Academy, it's going to go straight to that lesson there. All of our live demos are automatically recorded, so just a few minutes after this one is done, it will be available to record. And here's all of our past ones here as well about the different Google Cloud Live sessions. This is the one that's live right now, so that takes you exactly to where we're at right now. And right when the stream ends, it'll be available the entirety as well. So yes, you can review all of our live sessions later if you happen to miss some bits of it. Excellent question. Thank you for that. You know what? I don't think we're really going to have time to get into data prep unless we go, you know what? We're going to get into data prep. Go ahead and if you want to see a more in-depth breakdown of data prep, go back to that form we linked earlier in chat. I'm going to go ahead and relink to it here again. And tell me, no, that's not what I want to do. Give me 1 second here. El, you might need to help me out here. Okay, lost the window here. If you scroll up in chat a little bit, there is a Google form that says docs.google.com. You can actually suggest what you want to see in there if you want to see a little bit more of a further breakdown. You know what? I'm going to go and get into data prep here. It may let us run a little bit long, so if you're bored, go ahead and drop off. But I do want to go ahead and jump into it and check it out. So getting into data prep just came out of beta. When you're working with big data, you need to clean up that data. Thank you all for bailing me out there. You need to clean up that data so you take messy, unusable data and make it less messy and less unusable. Basically, make it prettier and more usable. And how data prep works, part of the whole data engineer process is taking that messy data and making it usable so you can get some sort of an insights from it. And how data prep works, we're going to demonstrate here in just a second, is it actually lets you take raw data and via a web console point and click interface, basically as user friendly as it can possibly be, you can basically take garbage and pull out relevant stuff from that and make it a lot more usable. Let's go ahead and demonstrate that now. So if we want to get into data prep, it's going to make a lot more sense as we get into it as well. Data prep is actually managed by a third-party service officially partnered with Google called Trifacta. And what we're going to do is we are going to take some sample data that's basically unusable, and we're going to very easily make that something usable. Now, behind the scenes, what's actually going on is it's using another big data service called Cloud Dataflow, which is basically a data processing product on Google Cloud that actually operates off of Apache Beam. It's basically a managed data flow service that you'll take a snippet of data, and then once you basically clean it up, it's going to run a whole processing pipeline to export those results into a final result into either a cloud storage bucket or maybe BigQuery as well. I'm going to go ahead and set up a staging bucket for it. Now, we're going to do kind of a short version here. If you want to see a more in-depth version, maybe merging multiple workflows together, again, go ahead and suggest that, and I'll go ahead and maybe take a little bit closer look at that next time. But what we're going to do is we're going to pull in some raw data dump that's going to be effectively unusable, and we're going to make it really pretty to go ahead and do stuff with it. Now, if you've been keeping up with our Google Cloud Weekly broadcast, the one I did last week briefly talks about data prep, so kind of give you a quick little heads up about what it's about, and this is more of the hands-on demo. What we're going to do is we're going to pull from a public cloud storage bucket that Google maintains with some sample data. We're going to pull up a web chat log in log format. If we take a preview of this, if you're trying to do some sort of insights from a big data standpoint, this raw data dump here is pretty much unusable. Can't really do much with it. What we're going to do is we are going to basically use data prep to take garbage and make it into something a lot more usable that we can actually clean up and use from an insights perspective. So if we were to import that, loading now. If you're trying to do some sort of a business intelligence platform in which you need to take, like raw data and work with it yet, this data in its current format is effectively unusable. It's a single column. It's a raw data dump of basically a bunch of web chat sessions that within the single column has time, session IDs, customer ID. It's just junk. I mean, it's not junk, it's all the data in there, but the format is currently unusable. What data prep does is it lets you essentially just highlight, click, and point and clean up that data so it's a lot more usable. So we have a single column here, basically unusable data that we can't do anything with. Let's go ahead and see if we can clean this up. We'll just do like a quick little demo on that. So we just do something very simple. Like, first of all, we want to get rid of all these different little chats export rows here, and that's nothing we can really use. If we just highlight that, it's going to automatically give a suggestion on the side here, and we can do a variety of actions with it. So with our chats export, we probably want to go ahead and remove those. So it automatically says for all the different rows, it says chats export, again, unusable data for us. We can just go ahead and easily delete that. And we have a number of those, 30 total, kind of peppered throughout it. So highlight it, select it, edit. It just removed the unusable rows for us. Cool. We're making a little bit of progress. So now we have the duplicate rows added there. Again, we can't do anything with. Next, we want to go ahead and take these single columns of a data dump, and we want to start extracting those and pulling them out into their own individual columns. Now, if you weren't using an easy click and point interface, you'd probably have to go through some sort of an application processing pipeline you have to set up that is frankly not really easy to do. It's actually really difficult to, in mass or at scale, be able to pull out each one of those individual columns. But it's really kind of cool how this works. So we can see we have different fields here like time, session ID, source, customer name, lots of different fields we want to pull out into their own individual columns. If we simply highlight a few of these fields here, let me go and zoom in just a little bit. Doesn't like it, but that's okay. So if we highlight session ID, so let me go ahead and reset that. If we highlight session ID, we want to pull that out. We want to pull out source as well. It's automatically selecting some other columns as well. If we scroll down, we have an option here for extract key value pairs. What's happening is that once we just highlighted a few pieces of text, DataPrep is automatically recognizing that, hey, it seems like you may want to pull out some of these different values here. You want to create a value for time, session ID, source, etc. If we were to click on that, it gives you a preview of what's pulling out. It's automatically pulling out different columns and it's starting to slowly clean up that data. If we click Add, it just did a pretty impressive amount of processing work on our behalf. If we then delete this column, we have column 2 now. Now, it's all in one mass, but it's a little bit more cleaned up. If we highlight each of these columns here, it's going to then go ahead and further break that out more. So now it's giving us an option to create additional columns for our 8 different keys here. Again, all I'm doing is highlighting, selecting, doing some highlighting. It's automatically suggesting how we want to break these out and go ahead and clean them up. That looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and click on Add here. So now we had a raw data dump of pretty much unusable data, and now we have a lot more usable data here, in which you have fields such as agent ID, customer name. This is still kind of a mess in this column here as well, and we can work with that just a little bit more. We have fields such as rating, session ID, source it came from, the time the request came in. This is data that we could export and put into a BigQuery data set and get a lot more insights from, more cleaned up data than pretty much the raw data dump we had earlier. Let me get my menu bar out of the way there. So let's see if we can clean this up just a little bit more. We have kind of a mess of a column here called GeoInfo. If I want to separate requests out by, let's say, IP address, separate it out by location such as longitude, we're just going to go ahead and highlight that. Highlight session ID. Okay, we're not getting a key value pair suggestion there as well, so we may need to massage this just a little bit more. Let's try this by, we'll do ISP. Session ID. Okay, so it automatically suggested key value pairs again. If we move our mouse over this, notice it's automatically highlighting the other sessions as well. We're going to go ahead and do this one. That looks really good. Further breaks it out from there. Click on Add. And then delete our redundant column. We now went from a single column of essentially data dump garbled junk. And now if we wanted to export this into a BigQuery data set for further analysis, this is much more usable info that we can go ahead. It's a lot more cleaned up. It's a lot more sanitized. It's no longer garbage. We can go ahead and work with that and be able to get actual value from our different types of data that we have. And then once this is done, we want to finalize the results and click on Run Job. And what's actually happening is when we click on Run Job, it's actually using the Cloud Data Flow service as a managed service to process all that data and give us an end result that we can then export into either cloud storage, BigQuery, or some sort of other receptacle that we want to use to be able to actually run data analysis on, run SQL queries against, import into some sort of business data visualization service such as Data Studio that we can actually use to get some sort of value from that data. If we then to run the job, we're actually running a data flow pipeline on Apache Beam. Again, completely managed for us. We're just, clicking and pointing and highlighting via a web interface. And that's going to complete in just a second, and it's going to put it into our cloud storage bucket that we created for staging just a second ago. Pretty cool stuff. If you are a Linux Academy subscriber, we go into pretty much a 45-minute demo just on data prep. Go into a lot more detail on that. I invite you to go ahead and check that out. But it's a really cool service. I'd really like to go into more detail on if you all want to see that, so go ahead and suggest that in the Google Doc form that I suggested earlier, and we can go ahead and do that in a future session. So that's pretty much all I had to talk about today. Again, it's a little bit of a different topic than previous weeks. We had a single topic we focused on, but today I just kind of wanted to go through a lightning round of sorts of different requests, such as creating a project, working with Compute Engine, going over the new alpha HTTP load balancer monitoring and logging service. Again, not quite fully baked yet, but it is pretty cool, and especially the ability it gives you to really get good insights about who's looking at your website, and if someone's abusing it, you can kind of get alerts and information about who is abusing it from there, and good information from that. And talking about data prep as well. Yeah, data prep's really cool. I felt like I was kind of tacking it on too much at the end of here. I just really want to demonstrate it. If you want to see me go further into data prep, go to that forum. I really hope someone suggests that because I really want to do it. Hint, hint, hint. And I really want to, you can do some really awesome, amazing stuff from a business intelligence perspective with data prep. That's pretty dang cool, actually. Mark asked, with data prep, do you need to hold a key, for instance, the shift key to highlight multiple syntax? No, you don't, actually. If you highlight different roles, it's kind of, good question, pretty cool feature, actually. When I was highlighting different roles, I was not holding the shift key down. So when I got those key value pairs out, I just highlighted on one, and then I just went and clicked and highlighted a different row, and it just kept the previous highlighting. So that's kind of a feature built into data prep. So really good question on that. Okay, Ashish asks, being a Google Cloud Associate or Data Engineer Certified, how can one find a job if not a developer? You know what? That is an excellent question. A lot of the cloud engineer and architect roles out there tend to want someone with a development background. Now, the funny thing is, I actually don't come from a development background myself. Most of my development work, or even pretending to know development work, has been pretty much on the job here at Linux Academy. I actually came from more of a sysadmin or ops background. It's going to be difficult. I think probably the best piece of advice I could give is maybe start looking at the DevOps side or architect side. That doesn't always require development, like hardcore coding experience. There are a number of cloud engineer or architect jobs out there where depending on what it is that you do, wouldn't go deep into code. I would highly suggest, however, that really kind of in this day and age of IT, having just a little bit of coding or development experience is almost kind of becoming a prerequisite, which is kind of hard for me because, again, I don't come from a developer background, so this is something I need to work on as well. It's kind of one of those things where you need to have at least a little bit of experience. I would suggest from a starting point, if you have no developer experience, well, if you're a Linux Academy subscriber, we have courses that get into DevOps. Now, DevOps doesn't really require hard code, like Java or Python or C++ experience. It helps, but the actual DevOps side, which is what companies tend to care about a lot, is more on, can you work with infrastructure as code with products such as like Deployment Manager or Ansible or Chef. So there is some scripting involved. There is a little bit of code you need to understand, but it's a little bit easier to get into while you maybe work on the actual hardcore developer side as well. So excellent question. I don't know if that was the answer you were wanting, but it's kind of one of those things where, especially if you're going to get into the cloud side of things, it's only going to help you. Now, some organizations want people maybe with more ops or sysadmin experience, so it kind of depends on what you're looking for. No real easy answers on that. So good question on that, though. Let's see here. Any other questions? I don't see anything at the moment. So we're at about 50 minutes for a stream, which is about what we tend to go for. Thank you all again for watching. Get a little bit of a grab bag today. I'm thinking of next week maybe going over... Let's go back to our suggestions. I think I closed that window up. We had some suggestion of wanting to go over maybe App Engine, and I'm kind of thinking about doing that next week. Now, the challenge with doing something like App Engine is that if you don't come from a developer background, it's real easy to get bogged down in code, because App Engine is all about bringing your code and let Google handle all the infrastructure for you, which if you don't come from a developer background, it's real easy to lose people. I think we can do it, though, where we can go over App Engine itself, take some supplied code, and kind of go over really the main App Engine features, where we can break that down for people with and without developer backgrounds, and hopefully make that informative and entertaining as well. If you have any of those suggestions, again, what I do is dependent on what you do in that Google form, so if you don't suggest something, don't get upset if I don't do it. Just saying. Thank you all again for watching. Again, we do this every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Central. I appreciate all you showing up. Go ahead and suggest what you want to see next week. I'm thinking about doing App Engine next week. If there's any other topics you want to see, again, go ahead and recommend it. Otherwise, I will see you all next time. I'm going to go ahead and leave the chat up for a few minutes. If you have any other questions, I'll go ahead and type in as well. But I'm signing off for the day, and I will see you all next week. Again, thank you all for joining.